getting older together and entering those empty nest years, it's not just about taking swim aerobics together or playing shuffleboard. There is some amazing stuff that can happen in those years. And y'all, sex is one of them. So we're going to talk about all the details today about how to have great sex in these empty nest years. So get the kids out of the room and come listen.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Expedition Marriage. We're so glad that you joined us. And if you were with us last week, we are recording our video now because we're on YouTube. So we're still
cool.
We're
so cool.
We're so cool. We're so cool. But we're still working out some kinks and all that. So we appreciate the grace. Always not sure where to look and what to do. But that's what we're doing now because people are on YouTube and they don't listen to podcasts, but they'll listen to YouTube.
I know, like a podcast.
So,
yeah.
And we want to reach more couples, more marriages. Right? And so that's the way that we're trying to do it. And so if you are on YouTube or watching us on YouTube, then we certainly would appreciate the subscribe button. Hit that. Leave us comments there. And if you're not on YouTube and you don't want to be on YouTube, well, then everything just stays the same.
You're good. You're good. But you can leave us a review. We love that, and that helps us reach more people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So last week we talked about romance with our kids. No, wait, that sounds bad. We talked about having kids and still trying to keep the romance.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And so we're going to flip the script a little bit this week, and we're going to talk about sex in the empty nest. Because this is a thing.
Yeah.
This is a thing. And
right.
it's kind of a problem area. And, we're empty nesters. And these are supposed to be great years.
Right. Well, you know what? The kids are out of the house. You know what? So they're, in theory, less stress, less distraction, less to keep up with, less noise, or worry about making noise.
That is true. That is true.
So there's a lot of benefits to that.
Yeah. Yeah, there should be.
There should be. But unfortunately, that's not the way it always goes. Unfortunately, a lot of couples are struggling and suffering from not having kind
of being in a sexless marriage.
They're in a sexless marriage.
And this is across the board as well, right? We've got some stats for that.
Yeah.
Of how things have changed.
And this is what's kind of staggering because, let's pull out the stats because in 1994.
Which just doesn't feel like that long ago,
It
but
doesn't.
It really is. It really is kind of a long time ago.
Yeah. Back in the 20th century.
Yeah.
In the 1900s.
Yeah.
So 1.9% of couples had reported of having no sex for the entire year.
Yeah.
No sex. Which, by the way, sexless marriage is defined by having sex less than one time a month or less than 10 times over the course of the entire year.
Yeah.
So,
and it's common.
It is. It's unfortunate. Well, in 1994, it was only 1.9% common. Today.
And that was sex less than once a year.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's like the extreme sexless
Yeah,
marriage.
that's no sex in the entire year. So today, 15.6% report having no sex for the entire year. No sex at all, not just being in a sexless marriage. So we don't know offhand how many more people there are, how many more couples are in what's deemed a sexless marriage where they're having sex less than once a month.
Yeah.
They're having it more than once a year, but less than once a month. And certainly they're not having it as often as they'd like to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here's the thing, like if you're launching from those, because we've already talked about last week how sex is more difficult and you have to be really intentional to be romantically connected and physically connected as well during those parenting years.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't do that, then you're going to get into like the teen years a little bit where you have a little more freedom, but you're still not engaged physically.
Right.
And now you're empty nesters and you hit that point. The empty nester phase is a huge time of pivoting.
Yes.
There is a lot of change, a lot of emotions come with that. Your identity kind of gets thrown around. I mean, our identity is in Christ.
Yes, always.
Yes. But if we're honest, sometimes that real close second identity is found in being a mom.
Oh, it's true.
It's found in being a dad.
Or it's found in my job, right? Versus in Christ And unfortunately, even if we're going to have identity as being a married couple, that usually comes secondary
Yeah.
to being my career
Right.
or my children.
Yeah. And even as a couple, like when you enter the empty nest stage, you're having to re-identify yourselves as a couple.
Yeah.
Because you've been mom and dad.
Yeah.
You've been parents. You've been all these things. And now it is a time of who are we now? And so it gets difficult. And so if you've struggled with remaining physically affectionate, if you've struggled with sex,
If you weren't intentional.
right, in all those years, you hit the empty nest years, it's not going to fix itself.
No,
It
yeah.
is not going to fix itself.
And you've all heard me say this. We get good at what we practice. And so if we've been practicing not being
Yeah.
affectionate, we've gotten really good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and there's something, we have a podcast on the gray divorce trend, which we will drop in the comment section as well, because you want to listen to that, because in these empty nest years, you're really prone to being affected by that, and we don't want you to be. And so as you enter the empty nest, a lot of change happens. A lot of big feelings and emotions come with it.
Right.
And all that. And you have to allow grace for that. And you've also got to make sure you have the right perspective. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. But I think one of the primary things about this empty nest season, if you want to be physically affectionate, you've got to have a friendship.
Well, yeah. I mean, we've said this before. Sex starts outside of the bedroom.
100% of the time.
You can't wait until the end of the day, after whatever arguments and or not talking to
Yeah.
each other, to be like, okay, roll over.
Right.
That's just
No.
not going to happen.
No.
I'm not saying it can't ever happen. I'm just saying that shouldn't be the norm.
Right. No, and it won't happen if it's the
Yeah.
norm. And so that's part of, here's the perspective shift for empty nesters, which, like, when we entered this stage, I
Right.
struggled because I was the mom who every year my kids would go back to school, I grieved. I'm like, I love our family, I love our children, I love being with them and doing things with them. I identified a lot as a mom.
Right.
But the empty nest years, they were hard. I entered some grief.
Right.
And
And
that-
grieving's normal.
Yes, that's allowed. That's allowed. And I also did that with him.
Shared the grief.
Yes.
So that way I knew what was going on. She knew, we had a better understanding what was going on. And I knew how to enter in and to help that.
Right. Right. Just by being there is helpful for that.
Sure.
But the whole thing, at a certain point, when you get through that shift, the shock of the empty nest.
Sure, shock is good. Shift
Yeah,
shock.
what you need to do is shift your perspective, because what I found on the end of that is there's a whole lot of opportunity here, and I don't know why I'm going to cry because, like,
And I'm not editing that out.
no, because, like, we get to be like true best friends again.
Yeah. No, and see, that's one of the things that's cool. And we've actually heard, and you're so sweet, honey. We've actually heard people like, well, we've just grown apart, or we just don't know each other anymore. Well, you're sharing a house. In theory, you're sharing a bank account, and still a lot of you, not all of you, are still sharing a bedroom and a bed. So maybe I'm just gonna. Maybe this is a little too far out there, but maybe get to know the person that's next to you.
Yes.
And put some time and effort into that, since you're already so
You're in
tangled.
it.
Yeah,
You're in it.
You
And-
kind of made that commitment to God in front of a whole bunch of people. And so if that's just the case, well, then, you know what, like, let's start to learn each other. And this is one thing, and I know you're going to say this, what's kind of cool is if you've been growing and you've been developing, so there's more to know. You can't possibly know everything there is to know about
No.
the other person. And as soon as you think you do, you stop
Yeah,
trying.
because that's assuming
Yeah.
we haven't changed through all these years.
Yeah. So yeah, if you've shared everything there was to know about each other when you first met in dating years and when you first got married, then then you have to assume there's no growth, no life experience, no shared experience, nothing that's there to learn
Right.
about that.
Right. And that's the shift. It's like
Yeah.
we've got to take that sadness we feel, maybe some of that emptiness, and shift it over to excitement.
Yeah.
Because you now have an opportunity to, like Chris is saying, to relearn who your spouse is. Who have they become since they've been a parent, since they've had a long career?
Yeah.
This is a time of exploration.
What are some new interests they may have developed or
Right.
have or want to develop?
Right. Because you have time now. Ideally, you may still be working and all of that, but you're not doing stuff with the kids. And so you can pick up new hobbies.
Sure.
You can
Yeah.
start exploring things. And we
Yeah.
talk about a lot of that on the gray divorce trend.
We do.
Because what happens is, there's parts of you that start to come alive. And if you're not connected, you want to take them over here by yourself and become somebody new with all these new ideas and new adventures you want to do. That's not what we want you to do. We want you to embrace that with your spouse and go, hey, what are our new likes?
Yeah.
What do we want to try? And there's so much to explore. And even our bodies are completely different
True.
at this stage of life.
Yeah, I was just thinking we're not shuttling kids here and there and having all this time and extracurriculars and all that. So you get a lot of time on your hands in theory
Right.
to be doing all this, including discovering each other. So, I mean, now should be a time of playfulness,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
As you're becoming friends, to play with each other. You got the whole house, people.
No, that is so true. And that, I think that's the part that made me tear up there. It's because it is so fun. It would be crushing to me to miss this season with you. You know, it's like the fun we have, the playing we do together,
Yeah.
the exploring, it's just, it levels up our dating days.
Absolutely. Yeah, the private jokes that we have that we can't ever tell anybody.
I know. Oh my gosh, we have so many. But
It's like that's funny, but we can't ever tell anybody.
no, we can't. But yeah, like you're saying, there is room to play, and you've got the whole house. You don't have concerns. Kids aren't going to come in anywhere.
Yeah.
You can,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and just the freedom of getting up in the morning, t-shirt and underwear, walking
Yeah.
around the house.
Shuffling around, get
Right.
the coffee. Yeah.
That is so great. So there are so many new things, but if you don't embrace them, then you're going to miss them.
Yeah.
You're going to miss them. And like I'm saying, I couldn't imagine missing this season of life and this season of newness with this man right here.
Right.
And so change your attitude, change your perspective, and do your grieving and try to work all that out, but then shift on over and change your perspective.
Right.
That
Absolutely.
You've got a lot of opportunities here. And on top of that, and I think to me, this is one of the greatest things about these empty nester years, and especially when it comes to sex, is I've got a whole history with this man. You've got a whole history with your spouse.
Yeah.
You have done hard things together.
True.
You've gotten through a lot.
Gone through the
And
fire together.
Yeah, you may still be a little bit in the fire because you're realizing, wow, we're not so connected now. Because if you're not connected, that gets highlighted in the empty nester
Oh,
years.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because that silence, that emptiness really
Yes.
echoes.
But you're here. You made it. You're together. Knowing you can do hard things together.
Yeah.
Knowing this has been, up to this point, this has been my ride or die. That is a degree of knowing one another, of security. And those things can make sex so much better.
Oh, absolutely.
Knowing you've done hard things together.
Yeah, you've had the foxhole moments with each other, and so
Yeah.
and you've gone past that, so you can know, hey, this person has my back. We can go through this together, and so we can have that deeper connection.
Right. And even if you don't have that history where you're like, oh, I feel like we've done this together and all that, they're there. And there's something to be said on that.
Yeah,
So
true.
you can build on that. You haven't bailed yet.
Yeah.
Maybe you missed the mark with learning how to thrive, but you are both still there. That means you've got a foundation to build upon.
Absolutely, a good foundation.
Right.
It's one that nobody else shares. That you don't share with anybody else.
Right.
So yeah,
And to
that's a good point.
leave, to leave a marriage and start that over, that excitement, you'll find excitement in new beginnings, but it's going to die as quick as it starts off.
Sure. Well, it's like starting a new project. I mean, yeah, it's excited.
Yeah.
But then eventually you just have a whole bunch of unfinished projects that become
Right.
overwhelming.
Because they're
and-
not fun anymore.
Yeah, and then they're reflective of of you not completing and of failing. So don't fail, complete.
Right.
Finish strong, finish well.
Right.
Like
You
Paul
can
says.
start new with each other.
Yeah, like Paul says, run the race well and finish well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
and
love
finishing
that.
together well is
Yeah.
probably the best thing you can do for yourselves, for your kids. So that way they know marriage lasts and can be enjoyable. And they don't just decide, hey, you know what? Marriage is only good for about 20, 25 years, and then we should bail.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Or for that matter, we've been together for 5 years and it's kind of tough. So why should I put myself through it for 25
Right.
years? Let's just bail now. My parents did.
Right.
And for those of you who did get divorced, that's not a slam. We're not trying to, so please don't hear that, but it's an unfortunate
matters.
truth. It's an unfortunate truth.
It matters. It matters. And so this is a new beginning. Embrace it and have fun with it. And here's another one that really affects sex in these empty nest years, because most of us are 50 and older
True.
in these empty nest years.
We're older than 40.
Yeah. And so you've got to be realistic.
Yes.
You are not 25 anymore. You are not 25 anymore.
Ouch.
You know, your body, like I
true.
was saying, it looks different.
Look, it feels different, moves different.
Yes. And so you've got to make you've got to adapt along the way, and you've got to address issues.
Yeah.
Because 50 and up, or even a little bit younger, issues start coming up.
Sure.
Women started entering perimenopause
Yeah.
and the menopause years. You know, you have issues like low libido for both spouses. You have,
Low
physical
testosterone.
problems.
Yeah.
Yes, for women.
Oh, yeah.
Sex can become painful.
True.
You can deal with vaginal dryness and all kinds of issues that you never had, and impotence problems. You, like we were saying, low testosterone.
Right.
And you want to be realistic. You're not failing. You're not inadequate because you're a normal human
Right.
being.
Your body might be struggling.
Yes,
But you're
there
not
are
failing.
answers. There are solutions to a lot of those things. And here's one of the things that I think is just a beautiful thing in this, because men, I think they start struggling if a man loses his libido. I mean, let's be real. The societal message to men is they have the higher sex drive, and so all they think about is sex all the time.
Every second you're thinking about sex if you're a
Right.
guy. And if you're not, then you're not a guy. What kind of man are you?
And that's just not true.
No, not true.
It is
So
not
far
true.
from the truth.
Yeah, but when that's the message, and all of a sudden you struggle a little bit, you're going to feel inadequate. And when men feel inadequate, what they usually do is withdraw.
Yep. Yeah.
They'll start staying out in the living room later
Sure.
while you go to bed.
I'm gonna just watch
they'll
finish
avoid.
this show. I'm just want to see the news. Then you fall asleep. Yeah, because that's what guys will do, and we've seen it, and it's sad. If they don't feel that they could close the deal, right? If they feel that there's a chance for that,
Either way.
either
Close
way,
the deal for either spouse.
true, yeah. Then it's a withdrawal. Let's just not initiate that. Let's just not put ourselves in that position. Let's not get there. And that will eventually work its way to where there's absolutely no affection. So there's not even a touching of hands or any
Because
kind of...
a hug, a handhold could lead to something that I may
don't
not
know.
be able to perform well in.
Exactly.
And here's where this can be beautiful. You got to be realistic and go, hey, these things happen. Large majority of them have fixes.
Yeah.
There are helps. But here's the thing. You will never feel more known and more close to your spouse than you will when they take one of the most embarrassing things, one of the most sensitive topics, and they lean in and say, hey, I'm feeling insecure about this. You know what? Sex now kind of hurts. I don't have the drive anymore. I think I might need some help.
Right.
And that knowing one another is a whole higher level than what you've potentially experienced up until this point.
Yeah.
And so even those problems, those normal issues that can come up, they can be opportunities when you lean in and share those with one another. Man, that can make sex greater because now you feel more connected because my spouse has just let me in to this sensitive, deep, embarrassing part of themselves.
And we say the word embarrassing, but it shouldn't be embarrassing, right?
No,
It's easy for
but
us to
it
say.
is.
It's easier for us to say, don't be embarrassed. You don't have to be embarrassed. But the reality is, most people are, and it's okay. So, but sharing that vulnerability with each other, that's where true knitting of the souls happens. We've got to be vulnerable with each other. And if we're not, one of the challenges is the other person will probably make a lot of assumptions about it being themselves being the problem.
they don't want me anymore.
Right.
They're not attracted to me anymore. Where it's really just inadequacy.
Yeah, it's fears.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to lean in to the spouse that maybe's not sharing. Don't be afraid to ask the question, where's your sex drive at?
Yep.
You know, how are you feeling? And if you've got a wife who you're seeing some menopausal symptoms, ask the question.
Right.
There
Yeah.
are resources, there are treatments, there are things you can do. And so lean in and ask those hard questions and share.
Yeah, I've got some stats here. 74.2% of sexless marriages end in divorce. So if you're not engaging each other, if you're not talking about this, you've got a high percentage of the marriage ending in divorce. 77% of those people say that they would have loved to have had more sex.
Yes.
They
So
just
they're
weren't-
living with a problem that they want to fix.
Yeah, they're suffering needlessly.
Yeah, they're dealing
Because-
with something
yeah.
that they don't know how to deal with.
And they're dealing with it alone, and they're isolated in their pain and in their shame,
yeah.
which was never God's design.
Yeah. So they're divorcing over something that could be fixed.
Yes.
That could be addressed. And in fact, it could be made better. Because let me tell you, sex in your empty nest years is great.
Yes.
It can be great. 43% of couples over 50 say that their sex life is just as adventurous or even more adventurous than it was when they were young.
Yeah.
That number can go up. That number can go up, but 43%.
We challenge you to raise that number.
Yes, that's right. And then 57% of them say sex is better. Why? Because they're less uptight. You don't have the stress of the kids. Your body image, you know, it's when you're young, you're like looking at social media and you're judging yourself. When you hit an age, that's one of the gifts I love about getting older. It's like, I don't even care. I don't care. Some of you care more. If you don't, especially like if you're not a believer, I think aging gets scary.
Right.
It gets scary. But when you have your identity in Christ, you know this is what your body's going to do, but you have less insecurity. And so you don't care and you are less uptight. Those things can make sex great.
Yeah.
Because sex is God's design for greater intimacy and greater knowing of one another.
Yep.
And you don't ever want to let that go. You always want to have that as part of your marriage because getting old together, it's a gift. It is a gift.
Amen.
Lean into it, learn to pivot, handle the changes that come with it, have fun, explore one another, reignite that friendship because even in the empty nest, you're made to
Enjoy the journey.